It's been about 4 months since the last forward performance tracking episode. Most of that time has been spent building out the website, publishing more data publicly, and working on Engine C. But enough has happened recently that it's time for another update. Overall, engines A and B have continued to track their modeled behavior reasonably closely. There was one notable divergence for engine B back on the 26th of March, which is marked by execution note number 1. You can see the description of that, or a longer description of that way below on the page. But this episode is not about that small divergence. The real story happened this week with execution note number 2. So one thing I've learned from running A and B live is that convex systems are much harder to sit through in reality than they look in a backtest. Looking at an equity curve after the fact is one thing, because it happens so fast and you just immediately get the end result, which looks great. But living through it is another. And these are low win rate systems, right? Around 16 to 17% win rate. And most trades lose. And the winners are what pay for everything else. And because of that, every winner feels important, especially during periods where the market doesn't seem to be offering the kind of conditions these systems were designed to exploit. For example, these past 6 to 7 months since launching. To be honest, I was getting tired of opening the app and seeing red almost every time, especially when working on Engine C. If I show you the app, I've pinned Engine C to the top. I've been working on it the past few months, and you can see that the production build of engines A and B are all the way at the bottom right here. So they are out of my sight, out of mind. Backtest makes it look easy, but living through it is a completely different experience. Instead, I wanted them running quietly here in the background while relying on alerts whenever my attention was actually needed. So this week, something felt off. Alerting did seem more quiet than usual. If I go back to the website, the incident occurred following the weekend. So June 12th was a Friday, 13 Saturday, 14 Sunday. So from 15th to 17th of June, things seemed more quiet. And you can see in my alerting system on Telegram that before June 18, there was nothing. Last alerts were on June 11. So I assumed nothing was really happening by design, but I was fairly certain there should have been an open position sometime in the week when looking at the charts and while building Engine C. Yet there wasn't. At first glance, everything looked normal. The C bots appeared to be running. By appear to be running, I mean these were all with this status, meaning that I could stop the bots. It seemed like they were running. They weren't in this state where I have this play button, where if the bot crashed, then I would see that. So in the logs, nothing seemed to crash. It's just logging stopped totally. And the curious thing is that all of them simultaneously stopped working. It wasn't just one or two. All the individual public engines A and B, all of the ones which are part of the book account, and my private A and B all stopped working. My first assumption was perhaps it was a server maintenance that IC markets or maybe cTrader do on their servers. But when I actually looked, the maintenance for the cTrader instances occurred the previous weekend and not this one. So at this stage, I still don't know exactly what caused all of the systems to stop simultaneously. What I do know is that all live A and B instances were affected at the same time. And because of that, trades were missed. So I did run a back test when I suspected something. There should have been trades, although mostly losing ones. There was one open trade by Thursday when I restarted the bots. There was supposed to be one open trade for Engine A, which turned out to be a winner. So had that trade been captured, Engine A would be sitting back around break even today. So if I go back here, this is what the latest back test uploaded. As you can see, for the demo and live for Engine A would have been around 0%, and demo would be close to -1%. And yet, because it missed a winning trade, A is stuck at -6% around. B is almost still very close. Even in reality, it would have lost a few more trades. It's still around -10 to 11%, which is not so far off. So instead, this incident cost approximately 6% of performance for Engine A. And when you're running a low win rate system, every winner feels precious, especially when the system isn't seeing many opportunities to begin with. But this is also part of running systematic strategies in the real world. Not every divergence comes from the market. Sometimes it comes from the infrastructure around the strategy. So in the end, this wasn't market risk, it wasn't strategy risk, it was operational risk. And operational risk is still risk. The market did exactly what it did. The strategy would have done exactly what it was designed to do, but the failure happened somewhere in between. For now, the cheapest fix is procedural. I'll need to continue checking the logs regularly, especially after weekend rollovers and at the start of new trading weeks. Longer term, I'd like to improve monitoring and alerting. Whether that's possible within the limitations of hosted cTrader instances remains to be seen, because these systems run on cTrader hosted infrastructure. There are limits to how much visibility and communication I can build into them. So one thing I have updated with engines that was supposed to first debut on Engine C was Tier 0 journaling, logging, which includes market opening, closing, session changes, and rollovers. By logging these things, for example, I can ensure that by Monday, market open, the logs can tell me that the system is still running. Even with this incident, the broader picture hasn't changed much. Up until this week, A and B had been tracking their expected envelopes very closely. Engine A in particular had been hugging its backtest remarkably well. In fact, the largest divergence we're discussing today wasn't caused by the market at all. It was caused by an operational failure. One missed trade hurts, but one trade doesn't define a strategy. The sample size is still small. The models remain unchanged. And in the grand scheme of things, one missed trade is still just one trade. And finally, after months of work on the platform, Tier 0 context, I now have the first serious Engine C candidate, which is over here on research. So in the next video, I'll shift away from forward performance tracking until something major occurs, such as the one that happened this week. I'll walk through the first Engine C candidate and why it survived the initial screening process.